All right, good morning, everyone. It's 10 o'clock, so we will get started with today's meeting. First of all, let's go ahead and call roll.
Dr. Solicito? Ms. Bullard? Dr. Grant?
Present.
Ms. Laredo?
Here.
Dr. Noland?
Here.
Ms. Prado? Ms. Ferber?
Here.
Dr. Bradbury?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Fantastic. Okay, so next up is going to be public comment, but before we open public comment on matters not on the agenda, I just would like to remind individuals making comments not to discuss pending complaints, pending licensing applications, or pending disciplinary actions that may later come before the board for a decision. Additionally, please be aware that public comment during this agenda item should provide information to the board members, but it is not a discussion between the board members and the public. The only action board members can take during and after public comment is to listen to comments and decide whether they want a future agenda item on the topic. Though this may seem at times like the board members are not being responsive, following these guidelines is critical to ensure the rules of the Open Meeting Act and are followed to avoid compromising the speaker's goals or the board's mission. In the interest of time, as we've done in the past, public comment will be limited to 3 minutes, and we would like to request that public comments not repeat statements made by prior commenters. If you are in support of a statement made by a prior individual and your comments have already been made, please just state your name or your association and your support for the previous commenter. Legislative hearings regularly use this practice as it is a good way to ensure that we can hear from everyone today. So we'll move into public comments, not on the agenda. And since this is a hybrid meeting, we will take those here in person first, and then we'll ask the moderator to open it up to those online. Are there any public comments? Moderator, seeing none in the room, can you open it up to someone online?
Thank you, Madam President. I've opened up the question and answer panel. If any member of the public would like to comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists. Or you may simply raise your hand. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, this is a moderator. I see no request for, oh, I spoke too soon. I do have a raised hand. Brooklyn Baldock, just a reminder, you will have 3 minutes. I'll give you a 15-second warning and you should be able to unmute. There you go, you're unmuted.
Thank you so much. So I guess I have a question first. I know in the beginning they said no comments about applications. I graduated from Ross in January, on January 31st, and it's just like about the application process itself. I've submitted my application on March 5th, and I still haven't heard back in regards to it, despite emailing and calling every single day since March 27th. I've called 1 to 2 times a day and stuff like that, and I haven't been able to get in contact with anybody regarding my application. And it's just a little bit concerning since I didn't know whether or not a 1.5 month turnaround time is expected during this time of year. And it's starting to worry me that with the new wave of new applicants coming in with the May and June students graduating, that my application will get lost in the new wave. And my current job offer is contingent on me getting my license soon. And so I have a detailed timeline of everything, and according to tracking numbers and information I've gotten from the Veterinary Medical Board, my fingerprints are confirmed and approved, and my degree conferral and transcripts have also been received in person, paper versions by the Veterinary Medical Board as well. And I just have not been able to get in contact with anybody despite calling and leaving voicemails every day for the last month. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I see no further requests for comment. Shall I close the question and answer panel?
Yes, please, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
I know we're not supposed to respond to those, but I think something offline after the meeting. How do we get the information, Jessica?
My team will look into it right now. We'll contact her back.
Okay, great. Thank you for your comments. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 3, review and approval of January 25th through 26th board meeting minutes. Do we have anybody here with any questions or concerns about the minutes? Kathy?
And I apologize, I left my minutes at home with all my notes on them. There were a couple of typos, minimal, and I remember them in the San Francisco SBCA folks, their discussion. One was an awkward wording that I don't think was right. It just was missing a word, and one was like an additional word. Minimal, but I apologize. I know that's where they were. I can bring them tomorrow and give it to staff.
Yeah, so if you want to bring those tomorrow, we can make them, and then the board can just, because it sounds like they're technical changes, so the board can still make a motion to approve them as amended with any technical changes.
Okay, it was all in that public comment period, I think.
Okay, I can't see well online if there's any hands up.
Sorry, Chair just recommend we just hold it over until tomorrow.
Okay, we will hold this till tomorrow then.
Sorry, one thing we could do, because a lot of people who attend today don't necessarily attend tomorrow, perhaps we can take public comment to see if they do have public comment on the minutes.
Yeah, I think that would be great. Is there any public comment in the room? I don't see any. Moderator, would you please open it up to public comment online, please?
Thank you, Madam President. I've opened up the question and answer panel. If any member of the public would like to comment on the approval of January minutes, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen, or simply raise your hand. We'll give you a moment. All right, I see no requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to move right along here to agenda item 4, report and update from Department of Consumer Affairs. Ms. Geer, welcome. Good morning.
All right, can you hear me? All right, thank you. Hello and good morning, President Bradbury, Vice President Solicito, Executive Officer Seiferman, and members of the board. I'm Melissa Geer, Deputy Director for Board and Bureau Relations, and I appreciate the opportunity to provide the Department of Consumer Affairs update this morning. Before I get started, I would like to take a moment to welcome Dr. Barry Grant to the board. Welcome. And I also would like to take a moment to recognize Ms. Kathy Bowler and Ms. Jennifer Laredo for their service on the board and their commitment and dedication to protecting California's consumers.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now I have several updates that I will share with you this morning, starting with a DEI update. Established last fall, the department's DEI steering committee is comprised of 12 executive leaders from the boards, bureaus, and department, and has been working on many items, including updating the strategic planning process, training, and development of an informational DEI fact sheet, which was distributed to board leadership. I am pleased to report on the progress of the committee's efforts to date. The strategic planning process has been updated to embed DEI into the process, which includes a survey, DEI section in the environmental scan, video messages, and a brief training video. This month's DCA Solid team began reaching out to executive officers to develop or update new strategic plans. In addition, all DCA solid trainers will complete a 50-hour diversity, equity, and inclusion training certification program through the University of Massachusetts. The training will expand the availability of courses offered to all DCA employees. Employees can access and register now for 3 DEI courses available in June 2023. DCA's first diversity, equity, and inclusion fact sheet has been released. It was developed as an informational tool and includes the department's 3 DEI initiatives, memorializes DCA services that support DEI efforts, and includes DEI terminology as it applies to DCA. The DEI Steering Committee's work continues, and I look forward to updating you in the months ahead on our progress. Next is a required board member trainings reminder. There are 2 DCA-wide mandatory trainings for 2023. This includes sexual harassment prevention training and information security awareness. All DCA employees and appointees, including board and advisory council members, will need to complete the sexual harassment prevention training this year. Board members must take the 2-hour supervisory training, and advisory council members must take the 1-hour non-supervisory training. This training is required every odd-numbered year and is online, self-paced, in approximately 2 hours. Board members with an assigned DCA email, which would be dca.ca.gov, are required to complete the Information Security Awareness Fundamentals training. This training addresses everyone's role in protecting DCA data and information. The training is online and required every year. Both the sexual harassment prevention training and information security awareness training are available in the department's learning management system, which we commonly refer to as LMS. For more information, a mandatory trainings page has been created to help members identify, access, and track specified trainings. The page includes direct links to mandatory trainings as well as pertinent information and policies specific to those training courses. Go to dca.ca.gov and click on the DCA Board Member Resource Center page under Required Board Member Training. You can also reach out to me or Yvonne Durantes. In addition, as this year's annual Form 700 period comes to a close, DCA and BBR would like to thank all of our board members and executive officers who helped us achieve compliance. As a reminder, board members must complete BMONT within 1 year of their appointment or reappointment. On June 20th, 2023, BMONT will be offered in person in Sacramento and again on October 10th, 2023 at a location to be determined. Members can register for this training via LMS. And for those board members that are new, you should have also received an email recently just as a reminder and letting you know about the training. Also, as all of you are aware, legislation passed last year amending provisions to the Badly Keene Open Meeting Act to extend the ability of state bodies such as DCA's boards and bureaus to conduct public meetings virtually through July 1st, 2023. Absent the passing of new legislation to extend these provisions, DCA's boards and bureaus will not be allowed to conduct meetings virtually after July 1st, 2023. DCA is aware of legislation recently introduced, SB 544, which I believe is on your agenda for later today, which removes certain teleconference requirements from the Open Meeting Act. However, this bill does not include an urgency clause. It would not take effect until January 1st, 2024. Therefore, boards and bureaus should be prepared to conduct public meetings in person in the interim beginning July 1st, 2023. In other news, on January 5th, 2023, a new federal law took effect that enables service members and their spouses who hold professional licenses in a different state to practice in California within the same professional discipline and in a similar scope of practice, if they are required to relocate to California due to their military orders. Since becoming aware of the new law, DCA has been collaborating with agency on how best to implement it. DCA will share information as it becomes available. In the meantime, should your board receive an inquiry from a service member or spouse regarding this new law, please contact DCA Legal Affairs. Finally, DCA submitted its 2021-2022 annual report to the legislature, and the report is now available on the DCA website. This annual report includes a new design and additional reporting metrics such as military licensing data, now required for all DCA boards and bureaus. We hope you'll take time to review this impressive compilation of the valuable work of the boards and bureaus. And you can find that again at www.dca.ca.gov, publications, annual reports. And as I close, thank you again for this opportunity, and I welcome any questions from the board.
Thank you, Ms. Gear. I did have a question about the DEI training and the classes. I don't know. I don't think we are considered employees as board members, but maybe we are. Oh, okay, so we're able to take those classes as well? Okay. Great. And so we would just check with you if we were interested in taking them. Okay, great. Any other questions from the board? Any other questions from the board members online? I don't see any hands up. Okay, we'll open this up to public comment in the room. There's no public comment in the room. Moderator, can you open it up online, please?
Thank you, Madam President. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment on agenda item 4, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen, or simply raise your hand. We are displaying instructions, and we'll give you a moment. All right, I do see a raised hand from Nancy Ehrlich. And Nancy, you should be able to unmute yourself. There you go.
I just had a question about the virtual meetings being discontinued after this meeting until January 2024. Does that mean that this board will no longer have the option of virtual or in-person attendance until January?
Okay, we're going to finish public comment and then we can clarify that.
All right, this is a moderator. I see no further requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
Okay.
So to clarify, what would happen is that the board could continue to do hybrid meetings. Any location where a member is participating remotely, though, would have to be publicly noticed on our agenda. And so that's that we can still and will continue to do hybrid meetings.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, we're moving on to our next agenda item, Ms. Schufelt. We're going to do a review, discussion, and possible action on the Multidisciplinary Advisory Committee report. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Leah Schufelt, RVT, Chair of the MDC. I'm also going to have Dr. Sullivan, our Vice Chair, join us once again with all of his wisdom and information on a few of these agenda items. So as you all know, we did have our meeting yesterday. And as an update, I think you guys have heard, but at the last VMB meeting, we did have Dr. Fowler appointed to the MDC and quickly put him on a few of our subcommittees, and then unfortunately, he did have to step down from that position. So we are sad at that loss and looking forward to getting another new member to join us soon, or members, public member as well. So as far as yesterday's meeting goes, we did get updates from multiple subcommittees, and the first 3 of them actually are things that were on your agenda as well. So figured we would go through those 3 things, discussed our proposed things for the board to take action on, and then I can give the further update on our other items discussed at the end of the report. So the first thing that we have the update, discussion, and potential recommendations on the minimum standards for alternate veterinary premises. Dr. Sullivan and Marie Assery did the work on this, so I was going to have Dr. Sullivan go over this for you.
Thank you. And without my computer, I wouldn't be able to do anything, so we'll get started. Minimum standards for alternate veterinary premises has been a never-ending project. The background section of the memorandum gives a detailed chronology of where we were in 2018 with the new regulation package that the board approved and the attempts to clarify the language, especially in the existing section 2030.3, small animal vaccination clinics. I assume that everyone has read the background material and it is important information, but I am going to read the discussion section because it goes into depth as to how OAL works and why the subcommittee staff and stakeholders are recommending the changes that are being proposed.
Dr. Sullivan, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but before you begin to, Tim, if you could provide, pull up the language that the MDC approved at the last board meeting, and then board members, I had emailed the revised language yesterday after the MDC meeting, so I just want to make sure that we're operating off of the same document.
Jessica, just to be clear, has that been updated in the hyperlink?
No, it is not updated online. That's why we're going to share it on the screen.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. In addition, the regulatory text was submitted to the department. Let me back up. During the January 2022 board meeting, concerns were raised with the pending rulemaking language specific to vaccinations and when and how a veterinary client-patient relationship must be established. In addition, the regulatory text was submitted to the Department of Consumer Affairs, Legal Affairs Division's Regulations Unit for review. Part of the process to amend and add regulations is viewed by the Office of Administrative Law to ensure that the agency's regulations meet standards set by Law and Administrative Procedures Act. These include whether the regulation is necessary, the agency has the statutory authority to adopt, amend, or repeal a regulation, the text is clear and easily understood, the regulation is consistent with existing statutes, court decisions, or other provisions of law, the regulation provides reference to a statute, court decision, or the other provisions of law that the agency implements, interprets, or makes specific by adopting, amending, or repealing the regulation, and the regulation is not duplicative of a state or federal statute or other regulation. Over the past 10 years, OAL has increased its scrutiny of regulatory proposals regarding the exact meaning of every word, particularly for clarity and necessity. In addition, the APA requires each regulatory amendment, addition, or repeal to be explained in the rulemaking package as part of an initial statements of reasons document that is filed with the proposed regulatory text. The detailed information that is in the memorandum will provide the language for the initial statement of reasons, and therefore, when the board approves the rulemaking package, it is ready to go. Following the regulations unit's review of the rulemaking previously adopted by the board's regulatory council recommended significant changes to the text, primarily to remove duplicative text in the proposed regulations. Accordingly, the board executive officer and the subcommittee formed a working group to do the wordsmithing necessary to prepare a rough draft of the MDC. In addition to the board staff, legal counsel, and subcommittee, the working group also invited CVMA representatives. On behalf of the subcommittee, Marie and I would like to thank our new attorney from DCA's Legal Affairs Division, Christy, our staff, Jessica and Timothy, our attorney, Tara, and Grant and Dan from CVMA for the many hours of wordsmithing to get the draft ready for today. By many hours, I think we had 4 or 5 meetings lasting anywhere from 2 to 6 hours. So It was interesting, let me put it that way. Very productive. Given the regulation unit's recommendation to make significant changes to remove duplicative language in the minimum standards for alternate veterinary premises proposed regulatory text, the attached regulatory text is restructured to remove duplicative text. We changed some titles and changed the format to make Section 2030 the standard that generally applies to every practice type. Then we list and describe each practice type and add sections that are unique to them and make a list of those sections in 2030 that don't apply. We made global changes to references of facilities as, quote, veterinary premises, unquote, and all terms of his and hers to their. I would recommend following along on page 3 of the memorandum. A lot of the detail in this part of the memorandum is for the initial statement of reasons. You will also need to kind of be going back and forth with the regulations themselves. Specifically, we are recommending the following. 1, proposed changes to the title to remove the word fixed so that Section 2030 has a new title, Minimum Standards, Veterinary Premises, to reflect the consolidation of the minimum standards for all veterinary premises in this section. A new introductory sentence, which is that all veterinary premises shall maintain the minimum standards set forth in this section unless otherwise specified. And we took the existing introductory paragraph and moved it to a subsection A1 of Section 2030. And I'll pause there to see if there are any questions from the committee.
Are there any questions on the board? Okay. Yeah, Dr. Nolan.
I'm sorry I'm going slow, but I think Tara yesterday mentioned the hyphen. Has that been fixed? I can't really tell if you guys fixed that hyphen. Okay, thanks.
Okay. So then we are finished with 3. So starting on page 4, we are retaining existing standards in subsections A1 through 5 with minor changes. We've changed the definition of indoor lighting to be more generalized. Subsection A5C adds clarity that signage is satisfied. To satisfy this paragraph shall be posted, quote, at the entrance, unquote, of the veterinary premises to avoid confusion over more of where a conspicuous sign must be posted. We moved paragraph A of section 2030.1 from small animal fixed to a new paragraph, subsection 6 of 2030, with modifications for when and how that exercise should be provided with different species and varied medical conditions. Any questions on that section?
Doesn't look like it.
Okay. Page 4, page 5, paragraph subsection A7 and A8 address 2 different scenarios of how a client must receive general information when calling the veterinary premises and information about normal business hours and name, phone number, and address of any after-hour emergency veterinary premises. Okay. Paragraphs A, subsection A, 9 through 18, are the same except for updating some language. Subsection A12 was revised to make it clearer as to what is available today. For consistency, the same language is used in subsection A13, and in subsection A14, the word stored is used for consistency with state and federal law. Subsection A17 is making the language, just making it more current. We moved the old paragraph subsection A19, which was the requirement that a veterinary premises had to be able to deliver oxygen in case of an emergency, because it is covered in the new paragraph A19, which requires all veterinary premises to have appropriate drugs and equipment needed for emergencies, which would include equipment to deliver oxygen, if applicable, for that veterinary premise type. We also moved the paragraph subsection B7, the section with aseptic surgery, to A20, because it needed to be more inclusive in all areas of veterinary premises. It is regarding the requirement that all floors, doors, tabletops, countertops, and window coverings shall be non-porous. Any questions? Okay. In section 2030, in section 2030, subsection B, we removed the paragraph subsection 1A because it was no longer relevant. The rest of this section remains pretty much unchanged. In section 2030.05, had a few technical changes. Section 2030.1 has a change in definition that makes it clear that it is a, quote, building, unquote, and we added, quote, or exotic to, unquote, to the household animals. Paragraph subsection A adds all of section 2030, and paragraph B is unchanged except for changing the word carcass to body. Section 2030.15 is a new section with the same definition as previously approved in the draft, and states that paragraph 10 of section 2030 is exempt from this veterinary premise type, and this is related to temperature and ventilation control.
Dr. Sullivan, I don't know if you skipped over it. I didn't hear you mention just that we added the word fixed to specify where the standards only apply to fixed veterinary premises. So I just wanted to. Yes, I skipped over that. Make sure that I think is a really important, good section. Okay, thank you. Anything else? Okay. So going on page 8, section 2030.2, we have combined all types of mobile veterinary premises, which include all types of vehicles that serve as a veterinary premises. The definition for this section is more more encompassing than previous versions. It repeals subsections A 1 through 6, B 1 through 5, C, and D. The requirement for hot and cold water would be relocated to a new subsection C, and the requirement for a 110-volt power source for diagnostic equipment would be struck as unnecessary because due to the existence of power inverters for 12-volt battery operating equipment and access to outside services, we felt this was unnecessary. The new paragraph, subsection A, is more inclusive as to what information must be provided to the client as to contact information, hours of operation, and information for after-hour emergency care. Okay, any questions? Okay. Page 9, paragraphs B and C relate to a full-service small animal mobile vehicle. Sorry, Dr. Sullivan. Yes. Dr. Nolan?
Do you want to, were you asking for questions on that specific section?
Page 7.
Yeah. I guess I just wondered why you folks chose, why did the subcommittee, and by the way, this was wonderful work. I don't mean to, this was amazing work. I'm really impressed. one says 18-point font, and then at the very beginning, you know, in 2030, we had a 20-point font. Was there a reason why we changed the font?
Yeah, I believe, if my memory is correct, the 20-point font is for the entrance of the building. 18-point font is for material handed to the client, so they have a record of it. It would be more the size for reading on a paper, if that's...
Yeah, 18-point font, isn't that pretty big for a handout? That's pretty big.
Well, let me check then.
I think it is for the handout, based on my understanding, but I think there was like a concern for people who maybe couldn't read the smaller font. But yeah, it is a pretty big font.
I'm just curious what that came.
Oh, Ms. Shields. Online?
Good morning, board members. My name is Christy Shields. I'm the current regulations counsel for the VEP board, and I was just going to insert that my recollection was, that's correct, Dr. Sullivan. The distinguishing factor is the 20-point is for a sign posted on the exterior or directly next to the entrance and adjacent to the entrance. And this particular disclosure was printed material handed out. And the idea was that we would make sure that for disability reasons, for people who might be visually impaired, older folks who may have issues with reading and access would be able to read it no matter what. So I think generally the agreement was 18-point font was sufficiently large enough for those populations and for all the general public to be able to read the materials and get the information. Because the idea is we want to make sure that you don't just get materials, but you get materials that are accessible to everybody. And I think that that was what the consensus was with respect to that issue. You could always go lower, but in my experience, there's been pushback from different communities when we go lower font size on any kind of written disclosures that affect health and safety and patient care. So.
Great, thank you. Yes, Dr. Nolan.
Thank you very much for that explanation. Then I guess I would propose that 20-point font is pretty small for a posted sign in front of a building. It's, you know, usually we're at 10, 11, or 12 when we write documents. And so I can understand 18-point bigger handout, but then 20-point would probably be missed. You know, it's not very big. So I guess I would say, I don't know, you know, maybe that ought to be bigger. I don't know.
Well, this is when somebody's walking to the entrance and it's closed, so there's a notice right there. So it's not like they're reading it from the car, I don't think.
I know theoretically the notice would be posted right on the front door, but it could also be posted at the entry, which means next to the front door or somewhere else that it would be. You know, I don't, if everyone else is good with 20 and 18, that's fine. I'm just, common sense tells me that's not very big for a poster on a door.
It's your call.
Yeah, I
move on. That's fine. I'm fine with that. I'm just mentioning.
Yeah, I don't see harm in increasing the font. I agree that it is like you wouldn't notice it necessarily. It might just look like writing, but you would be able to see it if you were looking for it. I don't know what the harm would be in increasing it. There. Well, let's move on, and when we
back to it,
talk about public comment, we'll.
Okay. Now we are on page 9. So paragraphs B and C relate to a full-service small animal vehicle that a client and patient can enter. Paragraph B is the same requirement that is in 2030.1. Paragraph C requires hot and cold running water and provides exemptions of paragraph 3 related to reception area and office requirements, and 8, which was related to postage signage of section 2030. The next section, subsection we have, has been amended, and I believe that should be on the screen. So the amended version from yesterday reads, when veterinary services are provided within or from a mobile veterinary premises to common domestic or exotic household animals, and the client has not given the veterinarian authorization to dispose of their deceased animal, the veterinarian shall be required to retain the body in the freezer for at least 14 days prior to disposal. Paragraph D lists the exemption of the small animal house call veterinary premises to Section 2030. The exemptions to Section 2030 that are subsections 3, 4, 8, and 11. 3 is related to the reception area and office size. 4 is separate examination room. 8 is is related to requirements of posting a sign outside. And 10 is control of temperature and ventilation control. So those are the 3, 4, and 8, and 10 subsections. And paragraph E lists the exemptions to Section 2030 for equine and or food animal and livestock veterinary premises, and they are the subsections 3, 4, 8, 10, and 15. I think the additional one, 15 is the method of disposal of a deceased animal.
Dr. Sullivan, Tara has her hand.
Yes.
Tara Welch, Board Counsel. If we could scroll up on this page right there to new subsection B. I just want to make sure that board staff is clear and licensees on this language. And I'd like to hear from Ms. Shields on her interpretation of the new language, that this only applies when veterinary services are provided to common domestic or exotic household animals, where it doesn't apply in scenarios where a mobile unit happens to provide services to small animals, but in the instance at issue, the deceased animal is a large animal. I just want to make sure that this language is clear enough that their deceased animal means a common domestic or exotic household animal. And I think, you know, this may be more for documentary purposes in the meeting minutes, so it's clear that this requirement to maintain or to retain the body is only for deceased common domestic or exotic household animals. It's less about the type of services rendered from the mobile veterinary premise. It's about the animal body. So Christy, do you agree that this language is specific enough that their deceased animal on line 3 in this subsection is clear that that only applies to a common domestic or exotic household animal?
That's my interpretation, Ms. Welch. I mean, if you want to be overly cautious, you could put the words retain the body of the common domestic or exotic household animal in a freezer for at least 14 days. That way there is no argument whatsoever. But I mean, I think it's fine. But if you want to put that kind of reinforcement in this sentence, then, you know, you would just simply restate what's in red behind the words. You would add of the common domestic or exotic household animal. That way it's clear that we're only talking about that type of animal patient. So if you're concerned at all, then I would put that, restate that language there. But I mean, to me, it says when veterinary services are provided. So if they're not provided and they're provided to a large animal, then the sentence wouldn't apply.
Yeah.
So it's up to this board, but I think it's pretty straightforward as written. But if you want to be extra careful, you could add that.
Ms.
But
Buller?
I'll leave it to the discretion of this board what their comfort level is.
Yeah, this is Kathy Bowler. I tend to agree. I think the word "and" is the operative. It's that kind of animal, and the client has not given instructions. I don't think you need to repeat it, honestly, but either, because I think it's pretty clear in that sentence, but I'm not a lawyer.
Yes, but we have to write language that is clear to the people who are affected by it. So if you understand it, then we've met our standard, in my view.
Yeah, and from an enforcement standpoint, I don't see a concern with how it's written right now.
Dr. Grant?
Had a question concerning if we're going to keep them in a freezer, does that have to be a designated freezer? You're not going to keep your Chinese food stuff in there as well, are you?
I'm trying to think if that is not in other language, but
it might be in the health and safety code. Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine that it's legal to combine food with.
And the other point is, it seems like it's the size of the carcass or deceased that is of concern, but there are a number of people in California who keep small goats and pigs, whatnot, as pets and treat them much like a dog or a cat as well. Is that what the concern is, that it becomes a practicality thing? I mean, how big some dogs are much bigger than a small pig too. Do we have to just include it being domestic species, or meaning cat or dog? Could be size is related.
yeah, I think that is why we use common, domestic, or exotic. We're hopeful that covers all pets that of the proper size.
Just a reminder to the board members, this is Christy Shield again. This is an existing standard. This has already been adopted by the board. And all we're doing here, because we've combined all the various types of mobile services into one section, what we're doing here is just restating the existing policy, which is to let it only apply to small animal mobile services. So
Dr. Nolan?
we're just simply clarifying here what's existing. I would ask the staff if they've had a problem in terms of enforcing this standard for inappropriate storage in the freezer. Can Ms. Sieferman comment on that?
No, we have not.
Dr. Nolan?
I guess I would like to ask Tara, because she's very good at this, but where did the word common domestic or exotic household animals, is it anywhere else in our regulation, that phrase? We use small animal, I know, a lot, but where's that phrase?
It is in the proposal, and actually, I would defer to Ms. Shields, who was very instrumental in drafting this language. But it is referenced in other sections like 2030.1. For purposes of these regulations, the small animal fixed veterinary premises shall be in a building where veterinary services are being provided to common domestic or exotic household animals. So, we are being consistent with the usage of these words.
So I apologize, Ms. Shields, and I would redirect my question to you. Thank you, Tara. Is this terminology in current regulation now, in other?
The common domestic.
Regulations?
The common domestic part is the exotic is what's new. The common domestic household is existing. And remember, we talked, Dr. Sullivan mentioned the Office of Administrative Law if any terms are used that are capable of multiple interpretation, they will require the board to specify what they mean. So we're trying to get away from the use of small animal when perhaps people might have different views as to what that might mean. And so it was the subcommittee's recommendation to add the word exotic because small animal services cover more than just the regular common domestic dog, cat type animal patients. So the word exotic was added. And then we've just repeated the use of that terminology to stay consistent through the regulations when we're talking about small animal services. So I would defer to the subcommittee on if there's any other terms that are used, but that's my understanding that this is what is used in the profession to describe small animal service to these types of patients.
Thank you. So therefore, then does the subcommittee need to define exotic to include Vietnamese pot-bellied pigs and goats and sheep or miniature horses or, those things? Or do we need to define it as, boas and?
I don't think so. I think we need to go back and maybe look at why this is even in here, this section of keeping an animal in the freezer for so long. For a period of time. It was put in here originally because small animal practices were having trouble with people requesting a body be kept for indefinite period of time. So that's why this was put in there. So I don't think we're going to have abuse from the other angle of things. It's giving the licensee a distinct time that they have to keep the animal. As a side note, we had a client that had a fire, so they wanted, and they lost one of their pets. So, and the client wasn't the best client in the world. I kept that body for over a year, and he came in and wanted it after a year. And, so it's that kind of situation that this law is addressing, not on the other end, not, the regulation for, there's a contract there when the client asks you to keep the body, and this is to prevent it from being abused.
I do think that Dr. Nolan brings up a good point about the term exotic, and I hate to belabor it because it isn't really part of this, but it, I think, shows up here for the first time, and we don't have exotic animals in Texas. I know we're not in Texas, but people that move here may think of them as, a wallaby versus here where we're thinking of, I'm assuming, pocket pets, birds and reptiles. So it may be that some sort of a definition is here, but I'm not sure if this is the place to do it, but it is where this terminology first comes into play, so.
Well, I think that the issue was, would we be able to list every possible type and make sure that we are adequately covering the practice so that people are not unduly restricted from practicing and meeting these standards, and on the alternative that we are covering everyone who might need to comply with this standard. So I think we were trying to capture what we believe was the common understanding of what an exotic household animal in California meant. But you would need to send this back to subcommittee for further discussion if you want to further discern or break down. I think it would be difficult for us to do that at this meeting if you're not comfortable. The other option would be to take out the word exotic and leave it with common domestic. But then again, that would be restricting some practice that the subcommittee believes should be covered.
Okay, Kathy?
And I don't want to throw a monkey wrench into this, so to speak, but and this has been a regulation that's been around, and I understand from Dr. Sullivan's background on this, I agree with this language, and I don't think we should change it, but I want to remind people, I have 200-pound Irish Wolfhounds, and so really, small domestic animals can be very large, and so I think I think it's fine the way it is, but even dogs can be giganto.
Yes.
So, thank you. I can't imagine ever not giving a vet instructions, but I'm sure it has happened, so, thank you.
Dr. Nolan?
I agree that I think we ought to define Kathy's animals, whether they're domestic or exotic. No, I'm kidding, but.
Exotics too, they're
Yeah.
just smaller than the domestics.
I guess my concern is adding the word exotic, because I think that down the road, when you talk about clarity, when you say common domestic household animal, I think that encompasses almost everything now that people commonly keep as household pets, and that's going to change over time. I used the example of Vietnamese pot-bellied pigs. I think they're maybe going out of style now, but they became fairly common in my world, and so that would have fell into this category. When you say exotic, anything that isn't common then becomes exotic, and that's kind of why do we need that term? Aren't we really trying to deal with the most common denominator? And as pets, like for instance, snakes are astronomically growing as common household pets. It's one of the largest growing species we have. They're common now, right? But who knows what the next, thing is going to be. So I feel like maybe in my comfort level would be to not include the or exotic and just continue with our common domestic household animals. But that would be my.
So I was going to say that if we get too overly prescriptive, it will actually impede your ability to practice. So I think the least prescriptive, but most, in the phrase it captures the most, and also keep in mind what Dr. Sullivan was saying, we're talking about actually giving you a time period where you can actually say, okay, it's been 14 days, and now we can move this along, right? It's so that you're not keeping animals for a year. It gives you a parameter to work with, and I think that's the focus. So, too prescriptive, it makes me a little nervous.
Yeah, I think that that terminology comes up in other places in this, so that's kind of why we're talking about the terminology, but I agree with that. Jennifer?
Not to further throw a monkey wrench, thank you, Kathy. I actually teach a course where we do different species every week, and I refer to them as non-traditional companion animals, but I still don't define them because I agree with Maria. If we get overly prescriptive, they'll find one species that isn't included, so I agree we should just continue with the definition we have.
So, Christy, if we were to remove the word exotic from here and just keep it as common,
Domestic.
Common domestic household animals, and remove exotics, could we move forward today?
Yes. We would just need to explain, that, it was an alternative that was considered, but it was removed because we believe that it would, based on today's standards, that some animals that were previously considered exotic are now considered domestic household animals. So it would be covered. I think we want to make the argument that, like the pocket pets you were talking about, birds, reptiles, that sort of thing, would still be considered common domestic from your perspective. And so we don't need to actually put the word exotic in there. Is that the argument you're going to make?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, for me, that's how I would be looking at it. Dr. Sullivan, did you? Oh, Jessica.
So what I would recommend, since it sounds like that's a consensus of the group, is when making amendments, we would just do a search for all or exotic and strike it from anywhere that it's mentioned. So that would be a clear amendment that the board would make.
It's in 4 places in 2030.1 and 2030.2. So we would just remove references to exotic from sections 2030.1 and 2030.2. I think it appears 3 times in 2030.2 and 1 time in 2030.1.
Great. Tara?
I just want to note that I don't know that we really need to explain why we're removing or exotic, because doing that, by removing those 2 words, it just really returns it to existing law and the usage of common domestic household animals.
Well, I think I'm talking about the consideration of alternatives. There's a requirement when we're preparing the documents that support the adoption of the text. It's called an initial statement of reasons, and also the notice that goes to the public. When the board considers and deliberates on options for implementation, you're supposed to cover those areas that were considered but disregarded and explain them. So I was just simply trying to kind of cement that for the record.
Thank you. I think that's helpful because that will help us in our process and speed that up. Yeah, Dr. Grant.
Do we actually need the adjective common domestic species?
Yes.
I mean, just having domestic species would, you never know what people are going to try to tame and train and everything would be the same. But and then, yeah, back to the point about the freezer, is staff going to let me know if that's part of a small animal or any kind of premise requirement to have a freezer large enough to handle these things? I mean, trying to keep, that's a lot of floor space and a lot of power to keep a freezer available all year round, maybe nothing in it.
Yeah, I think that they'll get back to you on that. But they're good points. So they'll research that and let you know. I guess I personally think the common word needs to stay in there as it is already part of existing law and it keeps it clean, but I understand that point. Is there any other comments about, yes, Kathy?
Would it be time on this particular item to do a motion to reflect what we've just talked about, or wait till the end?
I think we wait till the end, yeah.
Correct. That way, if there are any other amendments, we can do one motion for the record, amend the text before moving to the next stage to request adoption.
Great, thank you. I did on this just part B, I don't see his or her crossed out on the thing on the screen, which I know is so dispose of. Okay, it is crossed out. Okay, great. Okay, I think we're ready to move on. Dr. Sullivan?
Okay.
Sorry, Dr. Nolan?
Is this the time when, if I have another question about some other thing, I was looking at subsection E of A. It talks about the large animal. So I gotta get back
large
to it.
animal?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we covered that here, so this is the time.
Okay, so, sorry, I've got to roll back to it. I really missed the double screen days. Okay. When we go to subsection E, a mobile veterinary premises, there are some exemptions except for paragraphs at the very bottom, 3, 4, 8, 10, and 15 of subsection A. And this is, let me clarify, this is not the fixed large animal practices, these are the mobile large animal practices, or equine and food animal. I guess my question is, why would subsection 20 of A not be exempted as well? Because a lot of what mobile practitioners do are using facilities at the barn, facilities at the ranch, facilities that they have no control over, and sometimes you just make do with what you have. So I think as a veterinarian, as a mobile veterinarian, that would make me I would feel like it was not relevant to me.
Yeah, I actually, today when I was reading through this, I was like, oh, what about the lighting? So I had the same thing for the lighting.
Well, and I could argue that you need the lighting in the pickup truck to work, or, or maybe the surfaces in the pickup truck, but it just seems a little bit non-relevant to me.
Yeah, I think some of the facility issues
I think we overlooked that.
should be exempt.
I think we overlooked that. I think it should also be there. Unless,
Dr. Sullivan, I had a question on, oh, sorry, did I interrupt somebody? I had a question on the type of practice that consultants have they may store their specialized equipment, get mail, checks, send out invoices at their own private home. What type of premise is that? I mean, clients don't come there. There are a number of people who do consulting surgery and imaging and whatnot. Is that still a fixed large animal clinic, or?
No, that would be a mobile.
It would
That
be,
would fall under this category as a mobile premise.
I think it also depends, like, I think we were talking about earlier, if you're going to other facilities that have premise permits, like hospitals, then you're operating there. If you're also going to farms and doing it outside of like doing house calls or farm calls, then I think that would be a mobile practice. So it would depend on where you're using your equipment.
but you'd still have to have your premise licensed, so where you're keeping your instruments and medical records, et cetera. Is that correct?
Correct, but if it is categorized as a mobile veterinary practice, then these are the exemptions from 2030.
Thank you.
Christy?
Okay, so I'm going back to the prior statement. I'm sorry, I don't know everyone's names yet, but
Dr. Nolan.
Dr. Nolan, thank you. She had indicated that she thought there should be further exemptions for the large animal mobile subdivision E of 2030.2. So what was the section that she was suggesting should be added to the exemptions that are listed?
Subsection 20.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought it should be exempted, yeah, number 20.
It seems to me, this is Tara Welch, that,
Non-porous. Okay.
right, if that is exempted, it should be limited, because if veterinary services are provided within the mobile veterinary premises, floors, doors, tabletops, countertops, and window covering should be non-porous, right? But that's just when veterinary services are provided within the unit, not outside from.
Talking about a trailer.
Yeah, and you will see some modality, imaging, that sort of thing within a mobile trailer for practice, so, but that, I don't know.
But the animal isn't going into the trailer, is it?
Well,
Yeah, this is-
yes, you could if you're going to a show and you have, that you're doing some imaging therapy, you might load it in the trailer during the course of the treatment, it's possible. Yeah. Again, I think if you're talking about common equine mobile practices, we're looking at zebras, I think, if you look at the numbers.
So, I see that subsection C provides the within which.
Right.
And subsection E is from. So it seems appropriate, if Ms. Shields doesn't disagree, to include an exemption for 2030 subsection A, paragraph 20.
Can I also mention that if you go right back to the top of 2030 A, subsection 1, you do require that everything should be kept clean and sanitary at all times to allow for, so I think we kind of cover the fact that whatever you're using should be clean and sanitary.
And I hate to bring this up again, but the lighting, is that, they can't control the indoor lighting either, so.
Well, again, if the purpose of the lighting is for animal and human safety, it's a little bit of a stretch, because again, most of those practices are mobile trucks with that only the veterinarian gets in and out of. But I will tell you, Tara, that there are mobile units that do large animal imaging and treatments that might have a trailer associated with it. So maybe the lighting on the trailer, might be important. But again, I don't think that's the majority of mobile practices.
So if that's true for large animal, why wouldn't it also be true for small animal house calls?
I think small animals, there's more, it would be, I think, for people who are going into homes and
Yes,
not
that's
practicing
what
from a mobile
subdivision
unit.
D.
Yeah.
So, the the number 2 states, indoor lighting shall be adequate for the intended purposes. I mean, that, we're giving it a lot of leeway there. So
I totally agree with you, but I also feel like if we're doing this process, trying to be as clear and as common sense prescriptional, the less that we have in a lawmaking package or a rule for, let's say, the equine mobile practitioner, the better. Or even, in other words, keeping it simple and clear is part of the goal. I think necessity is a part of the mandate we were given, and if it's not necessary to protect the public, why is it in there?
Well, I would say it's necessary. Well, you have indoor lighting
in a barn.
But I mean, in an equine mobile unit, there is no indoors, so that's what I'm
saying.
Yeah, that's what I would.
Well, but if they go into a barn and they don't have enough, I'm just saying, like, if you're doing things outside or in a house and they don't have the lighting, I don't think anybody's going to complain about that, but I also think that, maybe for the mobile units that aren't within, the lighting can be removed.
Well, I would, my concern as counsel, my concern would be that its lighting is indoor lighting for its intended purpose, and it's incumbent upon the veterinarian to make sure that they have sufficient lighting to operate. And so whatever has to happen to make that happen, according to the standard of care based on the facts of the case, I think it would be appropriate to keep that. It would be hard to argue that you don't have to have adequate lighting indoors when it's indoors. I think that would be a hard argument to make from a reasonable perspective.
Okay, we're going to go a little bit out of order here. Dr. Miller? He was part of our working group, and we are interested in the intent and how this evolved. And then Dr. Nolan.
Yeah, I'm very sorry to go out of order, but I want to echo what Christy just said, which is correct. So when you're talking about a registered veterinary premises, we're not talking about the locations that we provide service. We're talking about the registered veterinary premises that is linked on our premises permit. So let's just take me as an example. I work out of my home, and I put all my stuff in a car, and I go out to the locations where my practice is taking place. But in my home, where my veterinary premises is registered, my surfaces that I work on must be clean and sanitary. My lighting must be adequate so that when I'm there sorting out my drugs and arranging everything, it can't be in a dark closet where I can't see what's going on. So if an inspector shows up to my house where I'm registered in my premises, the inspector is going to look at the lighting and say, is this adequate for purposes of safety within my registered veterinary premises? The context of the conversation in the last 20 minutes has been the places that we provide the service, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about our registered veterinary premises. So that includes inside my car. So is the lighting inside my car adequate for what I'm doing? Can I read? If I need to read plums or a textbook, can I see the labels of my drugs at night in the car? That's where the lighting came from. Can I do the same thing at home, which is the base of my registered veterinary premises? That's where we discuss lighting. I tend to agree on the exemption for 20 non-porous surfaces might be a little bit of a stretch because we're not actually performing procedures inside our car or performing procedures in my home, so I could understand why there might not be that necessity. But as you said, the belts and suspenders is that it says in number 1 that everything has to be clean and sanitary at all times. So if an inspector were to come in and say, somehow you have, wood tabletops in your house, they're all stained and they're dirty, that's going to be a problem. They could go under number 1 and say, we're finding this registered veterinary premises to be unsanitary, and there may have to be a change in that regard. So that was the context of the conversation.
Can I reply to that?
Yes.
I exactly agree with you, and I think that the lighting I don't have any problem with. I think, that makes sense, but the non-porous surfaces, but how are we, again, it goes back to also, how are you going to assess that? I mean, are we talking now that mobile practices now have to open their storage facilities in their homes for an inspection?
Sure,
Okay,
absolutely.
so-
That's
so-
always been the case.
So does that mean, though, that every porous surface in the room you store your drugs in has to be non-porous? I think that's where I have a problem with number 20.
Well, I tend to agree. I think we overlooked 20. I mean, it got really complicated trying to
Yeah.
go back and forth. I tend to agree on 20, but I feel like the conversation relating to the lighting is moving away from what is the registered veterinary premises to where we are providing services, and that's not the context of our conversation in creating these.
And I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. It was only 20 that really I was struggling with.
Okay, I'm good with the lighting. And I think that, are we all good with removing or exempting large animal mobile practices from number 20?
So it's my understanding that you're referring to E and adding 20 into subsection E. Is that
correct?
Dr. Nolan?
So my question, do I have a question for the board though, is should we apply that similar exemption to subdivision D for small animal house calls?
Yes, I think so.
So D and E would both have subsection A20 exempt from section 2030, which is the general standards for all premises.
Yeah, I think so. So long as the mobile units where things are being practiced still has that.
Right, so D and E, I put in parentheses, house calls, so that you would see right off what we're really talking about, because sometimes it's kind of a subtle distinction between within which services are provided when we're talking about a giant, mobile van where they're doing services, which is sub C, versus D and E where they're going out to a location and providing services. So that's why I kind of flagged in parentheses, commonly referred to as house calls or phone calls, just so that we would know what we're talking about really quickly. And so
Yeah, that's
D and E
great.
are the house call sections.
That's really helpful. Thank you. All right.
And for those following along, Tim is making those changes so you can see it on the screen as well.
Great. Good catch, Dr. Nolan. Is there anything else on this section Okay, Dr. Sullivan.
Thank you. Section 2030.3 is retitled as, and I quote, animal vaccination veterinary premises, unquote. Paragraph A better defines the purpose and meaning of this type of veterinary premises. Paragraph B defines, and I quote, designated veterinary personnel, unquote, which is needed for this section. Paragraph C1 would require the minimum standards of section 2030 and then lists the exemptions from that section, which are 3, 4, 8, 12, 13, 15, 16, and 18. And I don't have those listed. We'll have to jump back and forth. C2 states the requirement that a veterinarian must be always on the premises to oversee the recommendation of those that they supervise and to evaluate the health of the animal, answer any questions to the client may have, and treat any emergency cases that may arise. Subsection C through G and I and through L are removed because they're duplicative and unnecessary. This paragraph also lists the minimum requirements for the area to be clean and sanitized. In D4, it states what and how information must be provided to the clients about a telephone number of the business, hours of operation, and name, telephone number, and location of veterinary premises that can handle an after-hours emergency. And finally, the veterinarian must identify themselves to the public by posting a copy of their license.
Okay. Yes, Dr. Nolan.
I recently read, and I know I can't find it again, but we did at one point talk about exempting the not-for-profit and nonprofit vaccine clinics from having to get a premise permit. Do we even, where's that? How
I
is
think
that?
it was more of a fee that we were gonna not charge a fee.
So they applied for a permit. This would be the vaccine veterinary premises permit, but they would not have to pay a fee. Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
I believe so, if I'm.
Yeah, I can't remember if that, is that falling out of the process here? Remember how we voted on that? I'm looking at Tara and Jessica.
I'm not remembering offhand, but it's separate from this. This wouldn't change that at all.
Okay, but I wondered if it should be a conversation with this, because I think it is important to have the ability of a not-for-profit, nonprofit organization have vaccination clinics without paying a premise permit fee or having a reduced fee.
I think that, because I read this too, it's ringing a bell. I think it's in the history, when it was going through the history, and I think that's already been done.
I'm not sure
was,
of that.
I believe, at the meeting that we had at UC Davis, or back in 2018. Yeah, Kathy?
Yeah, actually, that's a very, very good point, Dr. Nolan. But I recall the discussion to be more, I call them pop-up, but clinics or events. We worried about the verbiage for a while on these stand-up events for vaccine clinics that were put together by nonprofits, rescues, and whatnot. And I thought it was all about they didn't need a premises permit, they didn't need to pay for that, et cetera.
So they all have to be registered. Cities and counties don't have to do, they're exempt from the fee.
Yeah, on page 2, there's a paragraph that says, additionally, the board expressed concern where nonprofit veterinary entities obtain a premise permit, as the cost for obtaining the premise permit may hinder their ability to provide these services at a low cost to their clients. The board discussed developing legislation that would provide a fee exemption for nonprofits providing vaccination locations. So let's see here. The board approved the proposed regulatory text. The board also adopted a motion to recommend legislation that provides a premise permit fee exemption to nonprofit and not-for-profit entities for vaccination events that would offer low-cost or no-cost vaccination immunization. So that's all that it says here.
So can you tell me where that was again? Thank you.
Yeah, it's on the top of page 2, paragraphs 2 and 3.
Not of the actual bill, but of the introduction.
Yeah, it's in the memo. Jessica?
Yeah, because the actual text is regulatory, not legislative, so you wouldn't see any legislative proposal in there.
Okay, thank you. I knew I'd read it somewhere, but I couldn't find it. And I do think it's important that we remember that, because I think that we did a really good job trying to make this vaccination, I hate to use the word clinic, sorry, but the vaccination clinic verbiage to be really attainable by these low-cost clinics, and I think it does that. So.
Ms. Prado.
Yeah, hi. So just to confirm, is there legislation that we proposed or that we worked on for the nonprofits to be exempt? And then in how this current regulations are drafted, what I understand is city and counties that are going to be doing, let's say, pop-up mobile veterinary clinics are exempt. But let's say if a rescue works with like a bigger nonprofit, like the ASPCA or something, right, to put on a mobile veterinary clinic, will they then be subject to these fees?
So this isn't, I don't believe this is these regulations aren't related to the fees. These are related to what's required for the premise permit and to comply with regulations to protect the public on the premises. So the fees is a separate issue, and it's a legislative thing. And I believe there's some notes being made right now to put this in the future.
Yeah, and what we could do is add it to an issue for our sunset to get it into our sunset bill.
Did that answer your question, Ms. Prado?
Yes, totally. Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Great, no problem. Christy?
So I just wanted to follow up with that. So the comments that were made about the language in the existing regulation, that's what the subcommittee and the multidisciplinary advisory committee had recommended, that the language for 2030.3 be amended to reflect the events that are occurring that need to be registered with the board, as opposed to using the word clinic. And that's what the primary changes you're going to see here. And basically to try to standardize minimum standards for all premises across all the different locations where veterinary services are being provided. The fee issue would be a separate issue as indicated. So this is primarily to clean up the text concerns the board had raised in previous meetings, and to address consistency in the provision of services across all premises. So that's the goal here, is that we don't have animal patients getting a different standard of care just because they're at a different location. So that's the goal anyway.
That is a very succinct way of putting it. Thank you, and very clear. I think our discussion here is, looks like we've gone through. Do we have a yes, Kathy?
I know we're going to get to a motion and then public comment, et cetera, but I just wanted to congratulate and thank the MDC members, the CVMA, all the collaborators on this project. This is huge. It's been going on for a while. The detail that you all put into correlating all of the regs and bringing things into what is real practice, I think is terrific. And I just want to say, I know it's hours and hours and hours of work, and I just wanted to thank you for all the hard work.
Jessica.
Yeah, so I just wanted to follow up to Dr. Grant's question specific about the freezer and having food separate from it. I just want to thank my management team, because while this was happening, they were researching codes feverishly. So we have CCR 33368, Section B, prohibited areas. Food and beverages shall not be stored or consumed in a toilet room or in any area where they may be contaminated by any toxic material. So you could say that animal carcasses could be considered toxic. There's nothing that really specifically says it, and so if the board wants to look at making it specific, perhaps you ask this subcommittee to look at drafting regulations to make it very specific. We had our team also looking at health and safety codes, and there's a lot about human bodies, not necessarily animal bodies. And then we have the sanitation requirements for practice, which is 4854. All premises where veterinary medicine, veterinary dentistry, and veterinary surgery is being practiced, and all instruments, apparatus, and apparel used in connection with those practices shall be kept clean and sanitary at all times and shall conform to the minimum standards established by the board. But again, still nothing that's specific to it. So you could have a separate motion after this is all done to ask the committee to look into perhaps drafting regulations that makes it clear if the board wants.
I think he also had a question about whether, as part of the inspection, if you were a mobile practitioner, the inspector would be looking for a freezer that bodies could be stored in, and
they do have the requirement for the freezer, but I thought he was specific that the freezer had to be designated for the bodies and not have like food and other things in the freezer.
Yeah, I think there was two questions, but I could be wrong. Dr. Grant?
Well, I think from a health standpoint, it just makes sense that you would have to have a freezer that would be designated for that in order to have it working when an animal dies. You know, it's going to take a while so there's a whole period of time for it to get cold to freeze a body, and even the floor space that a freezer takes is something to consider. So, yeah. I mean, I think it's important if we're going to require that veterinarians have to do that, but we should probably get some background as to how onerous that's going to be on small practices or even mobile practices, for example.
Well, I don't know of any small animal practice that doesn't have a freezer, and it's out in the back and it's hooked up all the time. And then a mobile practitioner oftentimes is connected with a fixed facility if they're going to provide that service. So, but spelling it out is not a bad idea.
Okay, in regards to yes?
For the language that's being modified. For the language being modified, I just want to confirm, we want to make it all uniform with common domestic household animals.
Correct. Thank you. Okay, do we have a motion? I believe there is.
Excuse
Yes.
me, this is Christy. Again, I think we need two motions. One to solidify and confirm the changes that are being recommended to the text that was approved by the Multidisciplinary Advisory Committee. So that would be our first motion. So I could try to help frame that if you'd like.
That would be fantastic.
Okay, so the motion would be to, second here. So the motion would be to approve the following changes to the proposed text that was recommended by the Multidisciplinary Advisory Committee. The first change would be to remove the word exotic from sections 2030.1 and 2030.2. The second change would be to add the exemption for subsection 820 from the minimum standards for section 2030 at proposed subsections D and E of section 2030.2.
Okay, do I have anybody who, Ms. Fuller?
I was just going to say, I think it's remove the words or exotic.
Okay, do we have to read that again, or can we? Okay. Do we have a motion? Ms. Knoll, or Dr. Knoll?
I can make that motion, yeah.
Okay, a second?
Second.
Great. The motion and a second. Should we take public comment on this first, or should we do another? Okay, before we go to the second one. Okay, any other discussion on this? I don't see any. Okay, public comment in the room. None. It sounds like the meetings beforehand were very effective. Public comment online, please.
Thank you, Madam Board President. I've opened up the question and answer panel. If any member of the public would like to comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen, or simply raise your hand. We will give you a moment. All right, this is a moderator. I see no request for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Call for a vote.
Dr. Solocito?
Yes.
Ms. Bowler?
Aye.
Mr. Grant?
Aye.
Ms. Laredo?
Yes.
Dr. Nolan?
Yes.
Ms. Prado? Ms. Berber?
Yes.
Dr. Bradbury?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great. I think, Christy, do you mind helping us with our second motion?
Right, so the second motion would be from your memo packet, where on page 11 at the bottom, it indicates that the motion would be to approve the proposed regulatory text as amended at this meeting. Direct staff to submit the text to the Director of the Department of Consumer Affairs and the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency for review. And if no adverse comments are received, authorize the executive officer to take all steps necessary to initiate the rulemaking process, make any non-substantive changes to the package, and set the matter for a hearing if requested. If no adverse comments are received during the 45-day comment period and no hearing is requested, authorize the executive officer to take all steps necessary to complete the rulemaking and adopt the proposed regulations as noticed for California Code of Regulations, Title 16, Sections 2030, 2030.05, 2030.1, 2030.15, 2030.2, and 2030.3.
Kathy? Thank you, and I would like to move that.
I'll second.
Great. Pardon me. Any other comments in the room? All right, public comment?
Grant Miller, CVMA. I'm very sorry. My brain is not working as fast as it needs to today. Just to ensure, are you okay with the 20-point font disclosure?
So I am a little bit obsessive sometimes, so I did go ahead and print out and send to Tim. The 18 and the 20 font, they're almost identical, and I just am struggling a little bit with the necessity of that. Did you get my email, Tim? I sent you this email with, if you just pull up on your computers, and I just took one paragraph out of this document and I made it 18 font and 20 font, and it looks almost the same. So seems a little silly to me, but in the spirit of moving things forward, it's fine. It just seems like it's not, it doesn't make sense to me. Make one 18, make them both 18, make them both 20. It doesn't make sense to have them different. It just makes the rulemaking a little more complicated to me.
So
This
our
is Christy.
discussion, oh, Christy, yep.
So I think 20 point is a common sign font size. It could be larger, but we're supposed to pick the least restrictive alternative to implement public standards. And so I think that we landed on 20 as kind of a fair font size that most people would be able to easily comply with little cost. So of course, if you put this out there and you get negative comments and other people are still uncomfortable, there is an opportunity to bring this back to you. So if you like, we can bring it back if we get no comments and you can reconsider it again. The other option would just be let it go through, and if we don't get any adverse comments, move it forward.
I'm trying not.
But I think, Dr. Nolan, you were saying just make them both 20 or make them both 18, right?
Yeah, I think there's a little part of me that feels like that doesn't make sense. If they're almost identical and you feel like...
Well, one is posted and one is handed out on a piece of paper.
I'm sorry,
So
and I
that's
agree with
why
you.
it's different.
But as a veterinarian trying to obey the law, it would make a lot more sense if I had to remember one number of a font instead of two.
So
they're so similar.
So the context of our conversation in this, we're trying to balance what is OAL's requirement for us to basically have every single word have meaning, and then also balance also what is currently understood by our profession. So for instance, if we have 4,000 registered veterinary premises who suddenly have to change their work front of their building posting, that's not going to be a very easy lift for the profession. And so we had debated about, the fact that 18-point font, if it's held in hand, seems reasonable for even people that have vision impairment. 18-point is reasonable, but what would be reasonable if you're standing in front of a door or you're standing at a door and looking next to the door? And we settled on 20 because we felt that it would probably be already in compliance with the veterinary premises who have had to have visible and readable notices per our current law. And so that was the context of the conversation. If you're concerned that a 20-point font is not readable to the public, then I would personally prefer that we address that now, because I do not, this has been 10 years in the making. Another 45 days is probably just going to push me completely over the edge. I'd like to just get this through.
Is there any way to print out a couple of documents in 20 and 18 and look at them and let the board see them at lunch? And
I was attempting to sign in on my phone and write your name, and of course my phone won't let me sign in.
I just already 20 minutes ago sent something to Tim, didn't I? Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing it up. I was trying really hard to just let it go.
So can we maybe take a quick break and then it'll have it printed and come back and finish this?
We can. I mean, we have a motion and a second right now on the floor. So, I mean, you could table it. You could.
How much material is actually going to be put there? I mean, is it paragraph after paragraph? It's not, is it?
It's hours of operation and
so it's not like if you make a large font, you have to have 2 pages or something. I mean,
no.
It's all going to fit on one page, correct?
So it doesn't. I don't think it has to fit on one page, but it would. Yeah, it's just the number, the phone number, and the name of the
hours of operation.
Yeah.
And emergency information, where to go.
Dr. Nolan?
Would I be willing to suggest an amendment that made the 18 font go to 20 font and just, how could I do that?
Tara?
We would have to we'd have to rescind the prior motion you just voted on, redo it,
Yeah.
so that you'd have to rescind the first motion and then redo the motion with those amendments. And we'd have to go back and find where it is in the text.
Can
to make
we,
it clear for the
you
record.
would, I think that right now, there's motion number 2 is on the table, that would have to be withdrawn. Then the board would have to make a motion to rescind the vote on motion 1, then go back to motion 1 and revise it that way.
Well, then I would like to just go ahead and vote.
Well,
I'll live with the differences. It's not the end of the world. I really think it's not the end of the world here.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? Any other public comment in the room? Moderator, would you open it up to the participants online, please?
Thank you, Madam President. I have opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen, or simply raise your hand. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, I'm seeing no requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Okay. Let's go for a vote.
Dr. Solocito?
Yes.
Ms. Bowler?
Aye.
Dr. Grant?
Yes.
Ms. Laredo?
Yes.
Dr. Nolan?
Aye.
Ms. Prado?
Yes.
Ms. Berber?
Yes.
Dr. Bradbury?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Excellent. Well, I do think we need a break. How about a 10-minute break? Can we come back at 11:50? It's 9 minutes. I would like to break for lunch. It's a good question. I was thinking after the next one, maybe, but is that? Since that's just the guidelines for cannabis, and then, yeah, oh, just a 9-minute. We'll be back at 11:50. So, are we good? Okay, great. So I apologize, Dr. Sullivan and Ms. Schufelt, but we are going to change the agenda just a bit because our student liaisons are up against a class deadline. So where are they? Oh, okay. So we are going to have them presenting their reports, although I think all we have is Amanda Ayers here today. Is she online? Okay. Alexandra, are you able, I know this is moving things up for you as well. Are you online? Oh, there you are. Great. Do you mind starting with your report?
Do we want to start with?
Yes.
Oh, okay, yeah, let me pull
Sorry,
it up.
we've
I
moved up
wasn't-
the agenda item, just, agenda.
No
this is
problem. I
agenda
know we
item
usually
10.
start with Amanda, so I didn't want to jump the gun.
Yeah.
No problem. All right. Are you guys ready?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Good almost afternoon. Good morning. Thanks so much for having me back today. I wanted to start with just a few kind of fun events, and then I was going to work towards some of the discussion points that you guys had chatted about last time in regards to my report. So first of all, the Western U Student American Veterinary Medical Association, SAVMA, welcomed Dr. Lauren Rowe from AVMA for its first quarterly meeting of the year in late January. And at this 1-hour lunch lecture event, Dr. Rowe provided a basic overview of the benefits of SAVMA for membership for the students and actually guided a website walkthrough and for the first and second year students that were in attendance. And second, Western actually, we're still like moving back to we're fully in person, but we're moving back into reinstating some of the events that the institution has held in the past, but that were held off during the prime COVID time. So we're excited to announce that the CVM Zoological Medicine Society Club actually reinstated its annual symposium in February of this year. Dr. Stephanie Lewis, who's actually a staff veterinarian from the Ojai Raptor Center in Ojai, as well as CVM faculty member Dr. Curtis Ng, were the ones that headed up the Wildlife Emergency Medicine Wet Lab portion in the morning of the seminar. And then a fellow CVM faculty member, too, in which Dr. Susanna Tukalchik and Tony Marino led an afternoon wet lab on the diagnostics and the pathology of fish. So students actually, this was a favorite. They really enjoyed this one. Following right along, last month, Western held its annual research day, which placed a particular spotlight on a wide range of research projects being tackled by the CVM students at the college. The event actually featured 7 student podium presentations, 3 research trainee podium presentations, and 3 poster presentations. The keynote speaker of the event was Dr. Claire Simone, DVM, a veterinarian advocate for ocean health, founder of Sea Change Health, and former director of the Hawaiian monk seal conservation program at the Marine Mammal Center, and also a 2018 TED Fellow. For the event, Forging Connections was the overall theme amongst the group and throughout the event, since veterinary research is essential to help strengthen our industry. So the collaborative efforts really remain the top priority of the event. There were also many projects that were presented during the event were regarded to strengthen conservation efforts, helping both today's endangered species and those that could become endangered further down the road. Western also places great emphasis on trying to create more collaboration amongst the industry professionals. And so last month, CVM faculty member, Dr. Susanna Tukalchik, who is a DVM and PhD, she actually treated the veterinary technician students at the local Platt College in Riverside to what she called Insight into the World of Veterinary Pathology. She hosted the lab at the Platt campus, and she took students through a necropsy course to help the future vet techs understand how the field not only determines the causes of disease, but can also lay the foundation for disease prevention. The visit was actually coordinated by Dr. Trudy Golub-Sowers, who is also a fellow DVM, and she's an instructor at Platt College. Dr. Tukalchik talked to them not only about the process, the veterinary profession, the role of the veterinary technician versus the veterinarian, her own journey through her career, as well as how One Health fits into veterinary medicine. And Dr. Tukalchik also mentioned that she very much hopes to form a continued relationship with Platt College so that eventually we could she could create more opportunities for the students to come and spend some more time at Western U, and just the campus in general, and then in the labs specifically. Because the school is fully recognizing and everyone realizes the need in promoting large animal practice, our college has actually been trying to organize more events that create a greater interest in large animal species practice. And so the Western U student chapter of the American Association of Small Ruminant Practitioners recently traveled off campus mid last month to practice. Sorry, that's my dog in the background. Hold on. My apologies. They traveled off campus mid last month to entertain some firsthand work at one of the local farms in Ontario, which is just a little bit north of campus. And there were actually about 20 students that were led by AASRP, by the student coordinators, Inez Rivero, who is a current third year student, as well as Christina Venegas, who is a current classmate of mine. So she's in the 2025 class, along with a faculty liaison, Dr. Spring Howland, and the group took part essentially in the organization's first hands-on event of the year. And the students had the opportunity to gain experience restraining and providing preventative treatment to sheep and goats, which also included in those care services hoof trimming, vaccinations, and deworming. And then the students also had the opportunity to learn more about the medicine's production side from the farm manager. Similarly, as I mentioned before, we're trying to reinstate some of the events that the campus has hosted in the past. And having been on a 4-year hiatus, we were really excited this last weekend. We actually reinstated the annual CVM Open House Day. And that is where first and second year students, along with the faculty, staff, and some outside volunteers, they all combine their efforts to host this special event, which welcomes the community to the campus and helps educate the public about veterinary medicine. And this year our theme was From the Seas to the Trees. The event was organized and run by Western's SAVMA organization, and but with assistance from the CVM administrative faculty and staff members. And this event is actually free and open to the public. This year we had approximately 1,800 people pre-register for the event, but attendance that day actually totaled close to about 4,000. And as part of these festivities, we welcome the area Boy and Girl Scouts to attend, and so that they have the opportunity to learn about animals. Sorry, guys. Okay, we'll try one more time. Let's see. Where the Boys and Girl Scouts actually have the opportunity to learn more about animals and animal care and earn their respective badges. So the respective CVM-based clubs actually welcome the Scouts and the community members to their respective booths, and at which the individuals in attendance have the opportunity to learn more. Sorry, I lost my spot here. To learn more about topics such as healthy diets for their pets, animal behavior and communication, identifying and controlling infectious diseases, the human-animal bond, as well as the economics of pet ownership, what animal-related groups, organizations, and rehabilitation centers exist in our local community, and then how to perhaps become more involved with them. And then finally, how animals help humans through veterinary medical research. And as is the Western U tradition, we also host an exotic animal open house, essentially, that's slightly separate from the event, and this is open to the public to visit. And so, though it's mainly focused on providing a spectrum of reptilian species for the public to see and interact with, there were also some pretty cute pocket pets that were there in attendance for the public. And with this, the idea is to educate and excite everyone. And so there's also opportunities to adopt some of the animals that are brought. And in addition, to honor our theme, from the seas to the trees, the Zoological Medicine Society, they also had a plant sale that consisted of a limited number of drought-tolerant succulents for everybody, and that was a big hit. Almost lastly, so I did want to touch on and update everybody about our admissions. This year, the applications for the College of Vet Med were actually up about 13.9% this year. There was a total of 1,207 applications recorded for the incoming class, compared to about 1,100 last year for the DVM class of 2026. And the admission interview sessions were completed this recent February, and the faculty and alumni volunteers that completed those interviews actually interviewed a total of 660 candidates, which also represented an increase of about 39.6% from the previous year. So we've recently sent out, or the administration has recently sent out about 145 acceptance letters this winter to the prospective students, and then sent an additional 150 prospective students in waitlist option. And the college has so far confirmed the accepted attendance of about 50 applicants. And we're hoping to find out the rest of the incoming class within the next week or so here. And then last but not least, Amanda had shared with me that at the last meeting, the board had asked for us to sort of try to surmise an approximate number of how many students might be interested in pursuing large animal species directed medicine. So I did poll the class, and based on the feedback that I'd received, it seems at Western we have between about 15 and 20% of each respective class, give or take a little bit from year to year, that reports a dedicated interest in pursuing large animal medicine in some capacity come graduation. It should be noted that this percentage does include students that are interested in strictly equine, general large animal practice, which could be, horses and ruminants paired together, and or strictly ruminant focused practice. And that is all I have for you. So thank you very much for your time. I apologize for my dog in the background, and off to Mandy.
Great, thank you so much, Alexandra. That is encouraging. I was really happy to hear that you had 20 students that went on that field trip to the small ruminant farm, and obviously that is a concern for our field and for the people of California, that we don't have enough large animal vets. So I hope that we can retain their interest in large animals. So that would be great. Thank you. That was a really great report. Is there any other comments from the board? Okay, should we just go on for Amanda? Okay. We will invite our UC Davis liaison, Amanda Ayers, and our new student liaison, Holly, I'm sorry, your last name, Masterson, so Holly Masterson. So they both are joining us.
Okay, so I'm going to let Holly introduce herself, and then I'll give the report. Thank you. So my name is Holly Masterson. I'm just finishing up my first year at UC Davis. I went to Cal Poly SLO for undergrad, Dr. Nolan. I grew up in the Bay Area, but just recently moved to Roseville with my mom and my sister, and I'm actually commuting to Davis, which has been interesting. Yeah, but I'm moving to Davis in June, so it'll be easier. But yeah, otherwise I'm hoping to kind of focus on large animal and livestock, so that's where I'm going. But yeah, thank you.
And Holly's doing herself a disservice. She is fantastically involved at UC Davis. She's our Theriogenology Club secretary and saves my butt all the time because I forget to send out emails. And she also is barn nurse and surgery tech in our livestock barn at the hospital. So we like Holly. She's fantastic, and I'm excited that she's taking over for me because she'll be a real asset. Okay. So, Amanda Ayers, UC Davis. I'm going to go ahead and start off. So, last time we talked about UC Davis submitting a bid for Symposium 2025. We were accepted. So, UC Davis, yeah. So, thank you to everybody who had to work on and sign the letter of support. That was super helpful. Thank you for all of that. And thank you to the CVMA people in the room who also wrote it. So yes, UC Davis will be hosting SAVMA Symposium in 2025. So don't worry, you'll still see me plenty as I continue to work on that. And then we are also, so our Equine Medicine Club, as a response to all of the discussions that we've been having with racetrack medicine and just in general, the shortage of large animal practitioners. Equine Medicine Club at UC Davis is going to put on an Equine Health Symposium in 2024, which I'm also helping plan. So we're basically, the idea is that we're going to increase networking, create a sense of community, and empower students, and just kind of encourage them that the profession is going to be lucrative, it's welcoming, and hopefully that'll encourage more people to stay. I believe in January of last year, I had mentioned that in a poll out to the student body, of the people who had said that they were interested in equine medicine, 30% of them said that they were no longer interested in equine medicine, either for some sort of a work-life balance discrepancy, income, or just general like danger on the job. So 30% is pretty extreme when we're talking about already having a significant shortage. So in recent census data, we have some pretty solid numbers on at least the classes of 2023 through 2025. So out of our 150 students in the class of 2023 who are graduating in a few months, 18 of them are interested in equine medicine, which is 12%. And then 12 students are interested in livestock medicine. I'm excluding the large animal students who are going into zoo or wildlife. So it's only the livestock and equine students. So a combined 20% of the class of 2023 is large animal, and again, 18 of them are equine focused. And then of the class of 2024, which is 146 students, we had 11 of each. So 11 students interested in equine, 11 students interested in livestock, which it comes out to 7.5% of the class for each of those respective emphases. And then out of my class, which is 149 students, we have 11 students that are interested in equine and 9 students that are interested in livestock. So we're steadily decreasing as we go further along in classes in the percentage of students that are interested in each. So for my class, it's 7.4% that is interested in equine medicine and 6% that is interested in livestock. And then class of 2026, they're just finishing their first year. We're not asking them to confirm what their interests are. A lot of them are still saying, I don't know, and that's okay. And so we can just assume that based on Holly and I knowing the students that we know, it sounds like approximately 15 of their 149 students are interested in some sort of large animal, whether that's equine or livestock. Again, we're trying to exclude those that we know are more interested in zoological or wildlife medicine, just for the purposes of our conversations here. So as we can see, it's a continued downward spiral of people going, that we start with, 12% equine, 8% livestock, and now we're down to 7.4% equine and 6% livestock. So
Working to recruit some people to our site.
yes, we're doing the best we can to be like, there are a significant number of small animal students that we've been inspiring to work in the livestock barns who are really enjoying it. So we'll see how that goes. That's more of a localized effort. Okay. I won't open for questions because that's not how this works. So the next thing I wanted to talk about, Capitol on the Hill is occurring now over in Washington, D.C. So there are students from SAVMA, not from UC Davis, unfortunately, that are over there lobbying for the two bills that the AVMA is supporting are the Healthy Dog Importation Act again. They had supported that last year, and there was some sort of I don't know why, but for some reason it needs to get lobbied for again this year, even though they had a significant number of co-sponsors after our event last year. And then the other bill is the Farm Bill. And then there was mention of also lobbying for legislation to classify xylazine as a Class 3 drug because of all of the issues with street usage and lacing, it just like fentanyl, but obviously a different drug. So yeah, those are the things that are being discussed in politics that I only know about because of my position on the Governmental Affairs Committee. So one of the things that we're working on, because UC Davis was not able to send a student in person, at a SAVMA level, we're working on trying to get need-based grant awards for travel purposes. A lot of the schools that are on the East Coast, we've talked about here before how California is a lot of times not a part of these discussions. It's because the East Coast schools can drive. So they oftentimes, the East Coast schools will have multiple students representing themselves. And so one of the things that we're trying to push for is schools like Oregon State, UC Davis, Western, WashU, trying to get them funding because it's significantly more expensive to travel for us in addition to the hotel costs and things like that. So that's something that's being worked on. I'm only including it because I'm doing it. It doesn't really pertain to California per se. Unless the CVMB or CVMA wanted to fund somebody to travel from UC Davis or Western next year. And then all of the access to care items that are still going strong. Street Dog Clinic, I believe, is coming up. I think it's next week. And then DPAW, Mercer, Knights Landing are still going strong. I believe I had emailed Dr. Nolan at some point. We're working together to try to get other practitioners to participate because our faculty are getting rather stretched thin because we have a significant number of cases in Knights Landing especially. And so we're doing some work to try to alleviate a little bit of the faculty stress. And then I don't know if anybody of you knew Dr. Lane Johnson. He recently passed away, but he was really, I mean, he was an inspiration and was integral for our Covello clinic, which did also just take place. And he was able to participate in that shortly before he passed. And so I just wanted to at least mention him because he was really awesome. And so, yeah, Covello was successful, which is great. And then we're working to figure out how we're going to continue moving forward with Covello without Dr. Lane Johnson. In better news, the upcoming school year, the 2023-2024 school year, is the 75th anniversary of UC Davis SVM. So we have a kickoff event next weekend for alumni, and then there will be other events throughout the year. I know that we're going up and down the coast. San Diego is having some event because there's a clinic opening there, and then I think there's some sort of cruise or something that there's all sorts of events going on. And so they're using it partially as trying to get like some more donors and things like that for all of our projects that are still going on. We have a lot of construction going on at the hospital still. And then just in general, just kind of throwing the UC Davis name on whatever we can. So I believe there's 75th anniversary merchandise if anyone feels like perusing. I think it's on the website. And then our last thing is that we recently hired a full-time DEI officer. Their name is Monet Roberts, and they're working on just getting their bearings. It's a new position, and so the idea is that Monet is going to serve as a bridge between admin and students, so that students don't have to go to faculty or admin that they're not maybe as comfortable sharing things with, and that way Monet is specifically this, like, not anonymous, but a more confidential support resource for them. And I think that is all I have. Yes.
Fantastic. As always, I love your enthusiasm, both of your guys' enthusiasm. It's wonderful to see, and it brings hope to the profession. So thank you, and thanks for coming and introducing yourself. I think I will open it up to public comment and questions. Is there any questions from the board first? Oh, Ms. Bowler.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you guys. Thank you, Mandy, and welcome. And I also want to thank you for mentioning Dr. Johnson. That's such a tragic loss for the profession, also for our board. He was not just UC Davis, he was so instrumental on so many levels as a volunteer for this board. It's very, very, very sad. So I apologize. I want to give our sympathies.
I'm wondering if the student reps could comment on how much mentoringship or inroad you have from both racing associations, equine practitioners, inviting people to be involved. Do you think there could be more? I'm just new to this, so I don't know how much is being done.
So I'm an equine student, so I can definitely speak on this. We actually recently had members from, not members, we had a private practitioner and a regulatory practitioner from Golden Gate come out and speak to our students literally yesterday. I think that the mentorship that we get from AAEP is a little bit more focused on getting students to be members and having access to resources. I recently filled out a student survey that I had mentioned that having people come and speak, having sponsored lunches, those kinds of things are possibly going to be more impactful on getting other students who might not know they want to be equine practitioners, just getting them information. There's a lot of discussion currently going on at the school about the USDA Veterinary Medicine Loan Repayment Enhancement Act. And a lot of people don't know that you can actually work, I think it's 30% of your time as an equine or a large animal practitioner in an area that's a USDA shortage area, and you still get that loan forgiveness, even if you're still spending 70% of your time at a small animal practice. And so I think a lot of people, they get hung up on the fact that they know that you're going to get more money working small animal. And so getting them all of this other information is our prime directive right now. There's not a lot of mentorship coming from AAEP. I know that the Northern California Association of Equine Practitioners is doing a lot of outreach through their liaison. It's hard without an event to get that information to students. We all get pummeled with emails, as I'm sure everybody on the board does. And so from a mentorship perspective, we're trying to get more of that like in-person relation, which of course is also difficult coming off of COVID. There's not any of these like traditional, like, oh, this person comes every year. We don't have that. So it's a lot of building the infrastructure and trailblazing currently. Hopefully that answered your question.
Alexandra, do you have any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do. I agree with Mandy that, there is a little bit of a limit sometimes on how much AAEP affiliated groups are able to offer mentorship. I will say with our curriculum at Western, I think we have maybe more of an opportunity for one-on-one interaction with our faculty members with the problem-based learning format and the rotating problem-based learning groups every 8 weeks. So I think that one of the benefits in our program is that students very much know the faculty and the faculty really know the students. So they're able to work hard to help connect them with opportunities for learning and growth that is, outside of our program. So I do see a lot of that goes on. Personally, I have an equine background, but I'm not pursuing large animal medicine for a variety of reasons, but I will say that I work as hard as I possibly can, and so do the rest of our large animal focused or inclined students at Western to really help spread the word. And people do that not only through the club organizations on campus, but just also personal ventures. I will say our College of Vet Med has very interactive and collaborative clubs, so they do try to link up together to create larger groups of attendees for events that are hosted, especially those pertaining to large animal sectors. And I know one of the things that we've worked really hard to do in the last couple of years with our Veterinary Business Management Association is to also start to put more effort and energy into connecting with some of the large animal practitioners in the area and helping make the business side of veterinary medicine, or those who are interested in that, also available to the people who have a particular interest in large animal medicine, or those that are even thinking about it in general. And I did mention earlier the event that the students went to the local farm, and that was organized via our faculty. So a good example of how they do try to promote and mentor. I will say that we have worked, the student chapter for AAEP on campus has worked hard to create a couple of events that are obviously equine focused. And one of the more recent ones, we've connected with a group to try to send students to the Opportunities in Equine Practice seminar that's being held in Kentucky this September. So we're trying to help facilitate like offsetting some of the costs for a good number of students to go to that. And the organization that is hosting is actually welcoming, I don't have it right in front of me, but I think 4 or 5 students that they'll cover the cost for. Their hope is to bring in incoming third-year students. So it's not currently available for the younger students or those that are a little further along, which is something that I might like to see later on. I think, not having things too restricted to a particular class year could also engage more interest, especially if there is funding for students, because, a lot of times cost prohibits the ability to join in different events. But that one has been good. And then, as I mentioned, the collaboration between the clubs, I think, makes quite a big impact. So we have, our student chapter for the Bovine Practitioners Club and AAEP and Small Ruminant, everybody in the realm of large animal practice or, even exotic medicine really tries to be integrative to create opportunities for people to kind of like explore. Because I do think that sometimes in equine medicine, it's not always as inviting of an group. So we're trying to, on the local level at the school, sort of change that perspective and make it more welcoming for everybody.
Great, thank you. Any other questions from the board? Dr. Nolan?
This isn't really a question. I just wanted to personally and as a board thank Maddie for all of the hard work and just really are grateful. I think that you were a part of kind of the inaugural experiment that we were doing. And I'll never forget when we had a question and I think we turned to you and said that, well, what do the students think? And within 24 hours or, you had come back with this poll of what the students thought. Thank you very much for that hard work and for all that you've done. I really wish you the very best.
Yeah, I guess I was going to wait for the rest of the public comment and then do this. But is there any other public comment? Does not seem to be. So I apologize. I'm not doing a great job today. Thrown a little bit by the change in schedule, I guess. I'll blame it on that. Moderator, can you open it up to the public, please?
Thank you, Madam President. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to make a comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen, or simply raise your hand. We'll give you a moment. All right, this is the moderator. I see no requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
Okay.
So first, I do want to just say thank you publicly to Christina Younghans, I think is how you say her last name. She was our Western liaison to start, and we have a certificate of appreciation for her. She did a great job, and we didn't have a chance to give this to her in person, so we wanted to thank her for all of her participation and hard work. And then we have a certificate of appreciation for Amanda Ayers. So really, you've done a great job. You're amazing. I'm really excited to see where you go, both professionally in the field, but also in administrative and organized veterinary medicine. I really applaud your dedication to what you're doing and all of your participation. So thank you very much. And, yeah, yes, we will, yeah. And with that, get to your surgery class. Off you go. And thank you, Holly. We'll look forward to working with you in the future. And so, Dr. Sullivan, I'm sorry. I think we're going to be breaking for lunch at this point. So I think we'll return at 1:30.